already in the morning. We're seeing lots of cloud coverage, some of us seeing those scattered showers. They'll eventually move off to the east, but as we go further into Monday, going to be dealing with lots of cloud coverage, maybe a few very isolated scattered showers. They'll eventually start to clear off as we go further into the afternoon and then fully clear by the evening. So rain totals, we've seen lots of rain today, almost 2.5 inches in Decatur, almost 3.5 inches in Coleman, over 4 inches in Haleyville, 2.5 inches in Huntsville. So seeing lots of rain, and this is a live look at Guntersville. Very cloudy, very muggy. 63 degrees is that temperature right now. We have a tight temperature gradient because of a cold front. 53 in Muscle Shoals, but over here in Gadsden, 64. Over the next few hours, we'll start to drop into the mid-50s. I'll have more on temperature changes coming up in just a few minutes.
Thank you, Lainey. Well, state troopers are investigating a deadly motorcycle wreck in Lauderdale County. That crash occurred around 6 p.m. yesterday near the intersection of County Road 483 and County Road 480. Troopers say Danny Robinson was killed when his motorcycle left the roadway and hit a fence. Aaliyah says the crash remains under investigation. The first woman to serve as president of Oakwood University breaks down what's on her to-do list when she starts the new job. She sat down with WAAY 31's Nicole Williams, who has this story.
Dr. Gina Spivey Brown will lead Oakwood University into the future.
The outpouring of love and support has just been magnificent.
She's the first woman to serve as president of the 129-year-old institution.
It just feels amazing to be in God's will, to be going back to my alma mater.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church founded Oakwood in 1896 to teach recently freed African Americans in the South. The Christian education-based university right now struggles with problems surrounding money, declining enrollment, communication, and transparency.
And so one of the first things I plan to do by God's grace in the first 120 days is to do a thorough assessment of what's actually there, from looking at every program that's in place, from looking at every faculty member, from looking at the infrastructure.
Currently, Dr. Spivey Brown works at Howard University in Washington, D.C.
I'm currently the dean for the College of Nursing and Allied Health Sciences. The enrollment that we had here at Howard when I started 10 years ago was under 700 students. We've now topped out at almost 1,500 students.
But come July 1st, she'll move to Huntsville to make Oakwood a better place for students to enter to learn and depart ready to serve.
We're just asking for prayer that we as a community can rally around each other and move through this thing together. We are Oakwood.
That is Nicole Williams reporting. Well, new information tonight as the White House continues to stand firm on the latest round of tariffs that the president announced just last week. One administration official now claims that more countries are requesting negotiations while consumers are bracing for higher prices. ABC's Allison Cossack has the latest.
President Trump back at the White House after a long weekend at his Mar-a-Lago estate.
Sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something.
His administration vowing to hold the course as new targeted tariffs on more than 50 countries are set to go into effect later this week. Goods from China facing a new 34% tariff, Vietnam 46%, and the European Union slapped with a 20% tariff. This in addition to 10% across-the-board tariffs on imports to the U.S. that already went into effect on Saturday. The president seen reading headlines about his escalating trade war and playing golf, posting this video, teeing off while urging Americans to hang tough, saying it won't be easy, but the end result will be historic.
What's going to happen with the market, I can't tell you, but I can tell you our country has gotten a lot stronger. And eventually, it'll be a country like no other. It'll be the most dominant country economically in the world.
Many economists say tariffs will be passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Last week, the stock market taking its biggest hit since the start of the pandemic. Americans watching their 401ks shrink and are now bracing for higher prices on many items, including furniture, electronics, and groceries.
I'm worried about prices going up. I've got some friends and family that have been telling me you should stock up on certain essential items.
Some consumers rushing to make big purchases now.
Once the president made an announcement that he was going forward with the auto tariffs, I knew I had to move.
Sunday, stock futures plunging again, setting up for another bruising day tomorrow on Wall Street. Allison Cossack, ABC News, New York.
Mega Millions makeover. Why lottery officials say they need to raise the price of your ticket to more than double what it was. More extreme weather. Now that the storms have passed, why the danger is not over yet for many communities.
Again, scattered showers affecting our area, but we'll start to clear out as we go into Monday. I'll have more temperature-wise of what we can expect going into the next week coming up in my full weather.
The unrelenting once-in-a-generation storm that has been plaguing the central and southern part of the country is now blamed for at least 18 deaths. Here's ABC's Morgan Norwood with the latest on this devastating stretch of weather.
The water is just rushing so fast.
Several states seeing dangerous and deadly flooding as this multi-day stretch of destructive weather continues into the weekend. More than 90 tornadoes reported in 10 states, from Kansas to Ohio since Tuesday. In Mississippi, residents say emergency text warnings gave them just seconds to escape with their lives.
Without it, my daughter and my grandson would have been in that room right there where there's no wall anymore.
Parts of Arkansas hit with more than a foot of rain. First responders wading through floodwaters, pulling people from cars in Texarkana. This family farm flooded, these cows now trying to find higher ground. In Grand Saline, Texas, this man sheltering in his bathroom while the wall of his bedroom was ripped off.
I just imagine the pressure that it took to rip that whole wall off the side of the house.
In Kentucky, the town of Hopkinsville underwater. Officials say at least a dozen people were rescued from their homes. Business owners using sandbags and pumps to try to stay ahead of the rising water.
We definitely are very concerned that It could get a lot higher, and if that's the case, I could have a greater loss than I have right now.
In Louisville, officials with the Kentucky Derby Festival announcing the city's Thunder Over Louisville celebration has been canceled due to dangerous flooding along the Ohio River. The first time in nearly 40 decades it's been canceled due to weather. Residents of Dyersburg, Tennessee, getting to safety at this shelter after the town received a third tornado warning Saturday afternoon.
We decided to come here just to make sure we were safe from the tornado.
And the Mississippi River overflowing its banks near Memphis' iconic Beale Street. The city hit with more than a foot of rain since Wednesday. Those heavy rains now traveling east, the highest threat for flash flooding now in Alabama and Georgia. Morgan Norwood, ABC News, Memphis.
Now, your WAAY 31 Storm Tracker forecast.
Well, now that those storms have moved through here, they're a little cooler. I mean, it's kind of nice and it's quiet, which we like as well.
We're starting a quiet period. We're also starting a cooler period. So we just got to get through the rain tonight. So if we take a look at the WAAY 31 triple Doppler, we got some scattered showers coming into our viewing area. It'll persist as we go throughout the evening hours as well as the early Monday morning hours, particularly just parts of the east side of the I-65 corridor are going to be seeing lots of this scattered showers. So going into Futurecast, starting at 3:30, we're going to be seeing lots of cloud coverage. Again, maybe a rogue shower or two. And as we go further into Monday, well, again, just start with lots of cloud coverage and then again, maybe a scattered shower or two. Forecast lows tonight, it's going to be a cold one. We actually have a pretty tight temperature gradient right now. 49 degrees in Muscle Shoals, 45 in Lawrenceburg, where a cold front has already passed. But as we go to the east of I-65, that cold front hasn't quite passed through yet. We're still in the lower to mid 50s. So it's going to be a colder night, and it's going to be the start of a quiet pattern. So tomorrow is when we start to see this quiet pattern, no severe weather, and then we'll start to see some cooler temperatures behind this cold front that's currently passing through our viewing area. But don't worry, we'll warm up by next week. We'll be back into the 80s. So that's something to look forward to. And as we go to the bus stop tomorrow, it's going to be just a mild start. We're going to be in the lower 50s, lots of cloud coverage. And as you're on your way back from school, we're not going to be changing much. Still going to be in the lower to mid 50s, lots of cloud coverage for your Monday. Again, not going to be fluctuating in temperatures much for tomorrow. We'll start in the low 50s and eventually make our way to the mid 50s by 5 p.m. That's actually when we're going to see our high. We'll see some peaks of sunshine going into the later evening hours, but going to again be dealing with this cloud coverage for the remainder for your Monday. Forecast lows for tomorrow night going to be even colder. We're going to be in the upper 30s to the low 40s, 41 in Decatur, 38 in Huntsville, 39 in Athens, 41 over there in Muscle Shoals. So this is going to be the start of our quiet period, our cold period, and we're not going to be seeing any severe weather going into the next week, which is so great because we've been dealing with a lot of it going into the last few weeks. So it's definitely good to see that we're not going to be dealing with any severe weather. We are going to be dealing with some forecast changes to the temperatures though. So tomorrow we're going to be starting off in the upper 50s. We'll warm up to the 60s by Tuesday, and then by Wednesday, that's when we're going to start to become more seasonable. We're going to be in the upper 60s and then to the mid and lower 70s by Friday. Overnight lows though, that's what's really going to pack the punch. We're going to be at 49 degrees for your low on Monday, and then that's when we dip into the mid or upper to mid 30s, 35 on Wednesday. That's almost below freezing. Don't worry, Thursday and Friday we'll start to warm up. We'll be back into the 50s for overnight lows on Friday. So gotta deal with these colder temperatures, but we get to have a break from the humidity. This is where this cold front is right now. It's pushing that muggy, wet air to the east, and we get to deal with this dry air for the rest of the week. We can see these northerly winds coming out from the north, letting us be drier and feeling that cooler air, which we all love. So going into the next week, we're going to be feeling comfortable outside, which is definitely good. And we're also going to be seeing lots of sunshine. We have a small rain chance going into Thursday and Friday, but otherwise, we're going to be dealing with pretty great temperatures. I mean, it's going to be a little chilly to start the work week. We're going to be in the lower 60s, but by midweek, we'll be back into the 70s, and then by the weekend, we'll be into the 80s.
Yeah, and that's what we remember from last week, and also it's a little bit lower than that, but we're going to wish we had these temperatures in a couple months.
In a couple weeks, we will.
It's good stuff. Thanks, lady. Well, the cost of a Mega Millions ticket just went up. Well, lottery officials say it's worth you paying more than double today what you paid last week. Big news for two of our own tonight. Morning anchor Demetria Green and sports director Max Cohan both won top honors at the 2025 Alabama Broadcasters Association Abby Awards last evening. Demetria is the Alabama Anchor of the Year for Best Overall Performance by an individual anchor featured on a local news program, and Max Sports Personality of the Year for Best Performance by an individual sportscaster of local sports events or sports stories. Congratulations, Demetria and Max. Very well deserved for both of them. Well, Mega Millions is getting a makeover. It will now cost you $5 for a Mega Millions ticket. That's more than double the $2 that it cost on Friday. Lottery officials say the makeovers so the jackpots will be bigger, averaging around $800 million. The first drawing with the new price is this coming Tuesday. Johnsonville now recalling 22,000 pounds of cheddar bratwurst because it may be contaminated with hard plastic. The 19-ounce packages of cheddar brats have the package code B9FOD. The Food Safety and Inspection Service says either throw the packages out if you have them or just take them back where you bought them. And a new study reveals that more teenagers are putting off getting their driver's licenses. According to that study out of the University of California, Irvine, 40% of teens delayed getting their license by 1 or 2 years, 30% by more than 2 years. And one of the suggested reasons? The rideshare apps. Well, Auburn falls one game short of the national championship final. There's still a lot to celebrate. Max and Chubb bring you the latest from the Tigers in Texas. It's all next in sports.
WAAY 31 Sports is brought to you by Current Electrical. Now from the Current Electrical Sports Center, WAAY 31 Sports with Max Cohan.
The Auburn Tigers came to Texas with one thing in mind: making history. The program only had one previous appearance at the Final Four, losing to Virginia back in 2019. This year, they hope to get their revenge on the Florida Gators, but Todd Golden's squad did it again, beating them 79-73. Hello again from inside the Alamo Dome. Max Cohan here with Trevor Denton. And Trevor, it was a storybook season for the Tigers, but Walter Clayton Jr. wrote the final chapter.
Yeah, he's become the story of this entire tournament. He exploded for 34 points, and really a tale of two halves for the Auburn Tigers. Too many turnovers in the second half, not enough offense, and the result is an early trip home back to the Plains as their season ends in the Final Four.
And when the dust settles, the Tigers will look back on this as one of the most historic seasons in program history. The most wins the team has ever had, the #1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, and of course a run to the Final Four.
Yeah, that's right. The locker room, tough scene in there for sure. Janai Broom with a hoodie over his head, barely able to speak. He took this loss so hard, but at the end of the day, only a few teams in the nation can ever say they've gone to a Final Four, and this team will definitely go down in Auburn program history as one of the best ever.
Auburn's meant a lot to me. Auburn changed my life. I was grateful I got to play for Auburn.
I wouldn't want to be on no other team and spend my last season with anybody else besides these guys. I mean, these are my brothers. I'm super proud of everything that we've accomplished this year. And it was one hell of a ride. I mean, these are my brothers for life, and I have a new family now. And just this year, we did a lot this year, a lot of things that people didn't think we could do. I just hate it will stop short by the Final Four.
This is probably the best year of my life, obviously, just being out there with my guys and, doing what we do best, try to win for Auburn, but obviously we was cut short, but I wouldn't trade the experience for nothing.
And while the ride is over for the Tigers, there's still a national championship up for grabs tomorrow night between Florida and Houston, and both Kelvin Sampson and Todd Golden know this is what it's all about.
Yeah, for sure. I remember a few weeks ago, both of us were in Nashville covering Alabama and Auburn in the SEC tournament. Of course, it was Florida that ruined Alabama's run in that event. Now they ruin Auburn's season right here in San Antonio. And Todd Golden drawing on that experience in Nashville as they take on Houston in their home state here on Monday.
We're obviously playing Tennessee in Nashville. I probably took for granted what that environment would be like, and we walked in there and it was 80% Tennessee fans, and I was like, man, we got a road game here to try to win an SEC title. I anticipated being somewhat like that tomorrow as well.
Our lives are so consumed by our next game, your next game, and I'm glad last night was not our last game, that we do have a next game. And that's a good thing for this group, because I've enjoyed coaching this team.
And Trevor, by tomorrow night, this trophy will be in someone's hands. Who do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I think this trophy is perfect size for some of the big men that Florida has on their team, and that's exactly who I'm going with to win the national championship. I've thought the Gators were the best team in the nation for quite some time now, really ever since seeing them with my own eyes go up against Auburn back in February, and I think they get it done yet again, bringing home their first national title since 2007.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree. SEC basketball has been the best in all of college basketball this season. Florida has been the best team in the best conference. I say they take it home as well. And Trevor and I will be sure to let you know if it is the Gators bringing it home when this game tips off tomorrow at 7:50. Reporting in the Alamo Dome with coverage you can count on. He's Trevor Denton. I'm Max Cohan. WAAY 31 Sports.
Yeah, we were talking about the humidity before. I can hear the raindrops on the roof here, so there's still some rain out there.
Yeah, it's going to be raining tonight and into tomorrow morning, but then we'll get a break. We'll see some sunshine going into the next work week, but we got to get through the clouds tomorrow. Tuesday, that's when the sunshine starts, and temperatures will be a little bit cooler, but then we'll eventually warm up to the 70s and the 80s by the weekend. So lots to look forward to.
Yeah, it's not too early to start looking at next weekend already with
No,
the
it's
temperatures.
not.
Just get through the rain tonight and the cooler temperatures in a couple days. Yeah. And we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, lady. Thanks for watching WAAY 31 News at 10. You can stay up to date on our website anytime at waaytv.com. Have a great night tonight, but stay right where you are. LawCall is next.
This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Joviat. Tonight it's Ask Us Anything night, so call in your questions on any legal topic. Maybe you've got questions about whether you can handle a car accident case yourself. Maybe you're curious about how the court process would actually work. Call in. Maybe you just wonder whether you even need a lawyer at all, and how do they get paid? What if you can't afford a lawyer? Call in the 31 Law Call number, 256-536-0077. You can call in and be live on the air, or you can text us to that same number and we'll have your text questions tonight. You can also email any legal question any day of the week. You send it to lawcall@waaytv.com, and when we get to a show that's on point, we'll have some of your email questions tonight. Michael Timberlake's here from Timberlake, League & Brooks. Good to have you here on this wet, rainy night.
Great to be here. It's always a challenge of my week.
It was very. We were talking about how foggy it is coming up to the station tonight. We'll talk about weather-related things, rain-related things. We like to get you started off while we're getting some calls locked in with some video. This is tonight's You Make the Law Call video. We pulled something off of YouTube. So you ever wonder how many different ways there are to roll a car? This looks like it is a European race, and so car after car after car, you get to see every possible permutation of this.
Yeah.
So in a cross-country race like this, I mean, it doesn't appear that anybody is seriously hurt, but you're taking on the risk, right, to be in these cars. Now, what if you're somebody that's on the side of the road here, whether this is the crew, if you're a journalist and you're covering a race like this and you get harmed? Have you just assumed the risk to be in these places?
It seems like a bad place. And this is not 565 on a Friday afternoon. But it's similar to this. You know, basically the way that, if you're going to go to a sporting event or something like this, if you don't have a written disclaimer, there's it's apparent that you are assuming the risk of some type of injury as a result of either being a spectator or engaging in an activity like this. So, if you sign a waiver typically for adults, those are valid for people that are going to participate. So that would be, the drivers, people would be excluded from any liability. And then the people that are watching, obviously it's a, kind of a, beware, beware of the racers type thing. So, not a lot of liability there. It looks like a bad corner in a racetrack, and maybe they want to look at trying to work that out for the next race.
Is it the same thing if you're a spectator like at a baseball game or something and you get hit by a ball? Are you assuming the risk just by being in the audience?
Yeah, correct. I mean, your ticket is a license to get into the facility, but it is not an insurance policy that you're going to be 100% safe. There are inherent risks in being at a baseball game. There's inherent risks of, being at a football game. So if it's something that is, uncontrollable by the owners and it's just part of the sport, you're not going to be able to make them responsible for what's going on. Okay. Now, if there's a net and it's supposed to protect you and the net's defective, that may be a different thing.
Okay. We've got callers waiting. We've got Francis on the line with a question. Hi, Francis. Thanks for calling in tonight.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. What's your question tonight?
My question is about an eviction.
Okay.
I wanted to know what is it that's necessary to make someone, have someone removed from your home. I've been trying to get someone removed from my property since the 1st of December, and it hasn't happened, and I want to know what it is that I need to be able to have them evicted. They're not paying their rent, and they're damaging my home, my property, and they're not, helping me with my financials because it's something, I'm retired, and it's something that I need, and I'm not getting.
Do you have an
I've
actual
gone to court twice,
Gone to court twice. Do you have an actual lease with this person?
They do not have a lease right now. The lease has been expired for a while. They are not under a lease.
Yeah, so it's what we call a holdover tenant. But even if they are a holdover tenant, you still have to go through the eviction process, which is, and if you're in court and you've already gone through twice, you're well aware of the process. I think there's a 2-week notice of eviction that you have to provide. If they don't vacate the property, then that time period, then you have the right to file suit. You can go to court, then the court will evict them. If they're not out within that time period, then you get the sheriff to evict them. You can, there's some processes you can go by where you can remove their belongings from the premises, and that's all set forth in the Landlord-Tenant Act. So if you're already in court, you're probably going through the process to do everything that you can do. Unfortunately, it's not as quickly as you want it to be. Typically, it's a 30 to 45-day process to evict somebody from a premises.
We got this email question from Cynthia. Cynthia says, I had a small fire in our kitchen. The cabinets were damaged and I got burned pretty bad on my hands and my arms. That was 3 months ago, and we're getting the runaround from our insurance adjuster. How long do we have to wait to have our claim settled?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, and a lot of it depends upon the type of damage, property damage that you have, and the cause of the fire. The insurance company's going to make sure it wasn't, arson. They're going to make sure it wasn't something that was deliberately set, and then they're going to get in there and they want to figure out what damage was caused by the fire, what damage may have pre-existed that. And then you're going to have to, wait on contractors to get approval from the insurance company. So, unfortunately, it's not a quick, easy process. Obviously, pushing it every day, standing on the gas, basically is going to get it done quicker. But they've got a right to make sure that they're not paying anything that they're not supposed to pay, and you've got a right to make sure that you get it done right and you can understand the process.
If she's got these injuries, is that all going to get settled at the same time, or is that going to be maybe something different different kind of insurance?
That's going to depend upon what was the cause of the fire. If it's a cause of the fire that was her fault, then that's probably not going to be anything she's going to get compensated for. If they can prove that the fire was caused by a third party, somebody else's fault, electrical failure, something like that, then you can go through and make a civil claim against the responsible party. But again, that still is going to take some time. Your homeowner's insurance company is not necessarily going to pay you for injuries that you suffered on your own property.
We've got Debbie on the line with a question from Joppa. Hi, Debbie. Thanks for calling in. What's your question tonight?
I'm having trouble with the people that bought the land beside mine.
Okay. Next door neighbors?
Yes.
What's going on?
I had it resurveyed, and they are moving the line. They put up a line, and they keep moving it farther and farther on my land. And like I said, I had it resurveyed, and I'm a widow, and they just keep doing it, and I don't know what to do.
Okay. Are they putting fences up there, or are they building anything on it, or are they just moving the little markers?
They are stretching a line, and instead of going the way the land line runs, the way my survey style was put, they're just like going way around with their line, and then they come back down and hook them right there beside my stop.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, is there a fence? Are they trying to put up a structure? Is there a roadway there? Is there, is the lot line accessible? Does people use that?
No.
Okay. I mean, what you're really looking at here is the pins and even the string that the surveyors may put up. It's not going to necessarily affect people trespassing on your property. It is not, but them moving the pins are not. I mean, moving the pins is illegal, but if they were moving the lines or they're moving the string, it doesn't give them any legal rights to your property. They're not going to be able to adversely possess that property if they start to build a structure on it, then that becomes a situation where you've got to take action and make sure that you stop that before they get it in place. But just the fact that they're not being nice about the existing line doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to obtain any property ownership to your property as a result of that. If you want to, you can build a fence on that property to try to delineate the line and where the survey is, and that may alleviate some of these problems that you're having. Or if they are coming onto your property repeatedly for some kind of whatever purpose, you can contact the sheriff about them trespassing on your property.
So far there's no real damage, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's not, they're not being nice about it, and obviously, evidently they're upset about where the line is. But until they, try to do something that, gives them some kind of ownership property or some kind of harm to you, it's, what do you do?
Yeah, those are tough relationships too,
Exactly.
the next door neighbor.
Exactly.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. It's Ask Us Anything night. Stay with us.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call. Your rights, your calls, live. Presented by the Tennessee Valley's award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm, Timberlake, League & Brooks. Featuring the knowledge and experience of Attorney Michael Timberlake, Attorney Will League, Attorney Heath Brooks, Attorney William Maservi. And hosted by broadcaster and family law attorney Sharon Doviet. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back to 31 Law Call. Tonight it's Ask Us Anything night, so call in your questions on everything from car accidents, medical malpractice. We've got callers waiting. Michael Timberlake's here from Timberlake, League & Brooks. We've got Tommy on the line with a question from New Hope. Tommy, thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
I want to know if there's anything I can do about illegal immigrant ran into me in a parking lot in a store in Huntsville.
Okay.
And I've got insurance that I've had. It's a real well-known insurance company that I've had insurance with them for 50 years, and they took the side of the illegal immigrant that had no driver's license, and they paid for their vehicle to be fixed and a rental car, and I have to pay my deductible, which they'll pay for mine to be repaired. But with I just wondered if there was anything I could do about that.
Yeah, if you're not happy with what is being offered, what can
Well,
you
I
do?
mean, one is your insurance company is got a legal obligation under the contract that you've entered into them to pay for claims where you are liable for damages to another person or their property, and that's what the insurance company is going to do. They don't have to get your permission to settle a claim if you've provided compensation for them to and contracted with them to pay claims that you are responsible for damages. They're going to pay those claims that you're legally obligated to pay. So that's what the insurance company's done in this situation. Unfortunately, some insurance companies will give you the option of having to approve a case or not, or a claim, but typically that's in a professional liability setting. But in a situation like this, your insurance company has looked at the situation. They've determined that you're liable for the damages to this other person or their property, and they're going to pay the claim. And that's just kind of the way it rolls. That's what you agreed to do.
If later down the road they raise his rates, I mean, and he disagrees with things the way it's been handled, what does he do about that?
Well, I mean, basically they've determined that it was his fault. It
Okay.
was, he's responsible for the damages. He's going to have to pay that. The insurance company's they're regulated. They have some privileges. They can't. I mean, they have some oversight. They can't necessarily deny somebody a claim for a wrong reason or deny a claim in bad faith. But if they've evaluated a claim fairly, there's really not much he can do.
And if the other person is not even legally in this country,
Right.
that they still have to pay it.
In the court of law, we look at evidence in situation. What is relevant to the facts,
Okay.
right? What is relevant to the injuries and damages that this person caused? And if you cause injuries or damage to somebody else, in the court of law, the fact that they may not be legally in this country or may not have legal status to be in this country, that's irrelevant in
Okay.
terms to the case for injuries and damages. So that whether they had a driver's license is not relevant to whether you injured them or caused them problems. Whether you had a driver's license is not relevant to that situation.
Okay.
So the court has processes and they look at what's relevant to the claim, and then they will make the appropriate decision.
Okay. We've got Christy on the line with a question from Fayetteville. Hi, Christy. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Yes, ma'am. I have a question about titles. We were left some money, me and my sister, several years ago. We paid to have a lawyer and estate settled. Fast forward 5 years, I'm trying to sell one of my last pieces of property, and the title came back, and there was a parcel that was left out of it many years ago. How do I go about? Do I go about getting a real estate lawyer? Can I get a regular lawyer, or is this something that should have been included in the estate when it was settled?
Gotcha.
Yeah, so if there was, basically what happens when if there's an estate, then the personal representative of the estate handles, will hire a lawyer to probate the estate. And typically when the estate is closed, all the property that is involved in that estate is then passed down to the heirs, and title is, written to them. You have a deed to the heirs, so the title is clean for the heirs. It sounds to me like that didn't happen in this case. There was a parcel that was owned that wasn't identified or wasn't properly transferred. So, what you're going to want to do is talk to somebody that does real estate work, and most real estate lawyers do probate work like this at the same time. So you'd have to, look into that situation and basically file an action to quiet title is what we call it. And that way the court would go in and they would look at the circumstances of what happened, and then they would issue orders that would then allow the lawyers to transfer the property to the heirs. It could potentially require the reopening of the estate, or it could potentially just require notice to the people that are potential beneficiaries to the thing, but to the property. But you're gonna have to talk to a real estate lawyer, probate lawyer that handles that in the county where the property is.
Hopefully, since there hasn't been a whole lot of controversy in the family this whole time, right? Maybe,
yes,
maybe it can go simply.
Things can go really, really, really smooth if everybody agrees. Things can go really, really wrong if there's one person that's an outlier.
Let's talk a little bit about the weather we've been having lately.
It's lovely.
It's lovely. It's wet. It's foggy. Let's talk a little bit about roof damage and leaks and things and what you tend to see. And so when somebody's had major damage, if there's been something going on, you are obligated to do something to prevent it from getting worse, right? Get some tarps out and cover it up. Talk to us about the kinds of issues you see and how to prevent problems going forward.
So somebody contacted us just recently and they said, look, there was a windstorm in my area, my neighborhood, and I had 5 of my neighbors, and they all got their roof replaced. My roofing company came out. They didn't even get on the roof. They sent a drone up to assess the damage.
The new tech.
And said, oh, it's wind damage, and we're trying to pay me for some shingle repair. And they're not going to replace the entire roof. And so, we were looking at it. We said, well, one is, the insurance companies, in order to assess, whether there's hail damage on your roof, they're going to have boots on the ground. They're not going to be able to do that with a drone. So either, you need to get a roofing company that will come up and give you an estimate and document the fact that there was hail damage. This person had, 5 estimates that said he needed a new roof. And that's great, but why did he need a new roof was the question. So you've got to be able to document that it's a result of hail damage. So we advised him and said, look, go get the information from your neighbors, see what their insurance companies did, documented, and if it was all documented that this was hail damage from a particular storm and your house has hail damage, then you're going to be successful. But a lot of it is pushing back at your insurance company to make sure that they do the right inspection at the right time.
Your insurance company, or many insurance companies, will tell you no, right?
Oh, yeah, they'll love to tell you no. And then you say, please put that in writing and explain to me why you're saying no. And they don't like to do that.
They don't like that. We got in a text question. So somebody had been hit by a car and they want to settle the case, but they also had his kidney was injured in this car accident. Will the insurance company pay for that? So if you settle one part of the case, if you settle the property damage, is the personal injury part still open?
Yes, and that's kind of one of it's kind of car accident 101. It's part of the things that we tell everybody on a regular basis is that you can settle the damage to your vehicle separate and apart from your injury claim. And just because you agree to a settlement for the property damage or the replacement of your vehicle in a car wreck situation, it doesn't mean that you've waived your right to make an injury claim. You definitely want to be sure that you know what you're doing when you resolve the property damage in terms of what you're getting, in terms of the value of the car, whether there's diminishment in value or whether you're getting fair market value for your vehicle. But those claims can typically be handled by the owner of the vehicle separate and apart from the injury claim.
We got somebody texting in that's talking about their employer has changed their time for their work, and they've got proof of it. It says it's the second time that I've clocked out, and the employer has gone back and changed it. What do you do about that?
Well, I mean, if you're working, but your boss is just changing your hours arbitrarily, is not legal. They're required to pay you for the hours that you have actually worked, and that's a Fair Labor Standards Act type claim that can be made if it's significant enough. Typically, in this situation, you're probably not dealing with large amounts of money, but you do need to be able to say, look, I'm working these hours unless there's some legitimate dispute over whether I'm working or not. You cannot change my time clock, take my card or pay me less than the hours that I was working.
They're telling us to take a break. We're going to take a break. Be right back answering more of your Ask Us Anything questions. Stay with us. If you haven't gotten your questions answered tonight, here's how to reach Michael Timberlake with Timberlake League and Brooks in Huntsville, 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. Their website is law-injury.com, and if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way.
And Sharon practices family law right here in the Tennessee Valley and all over North Alabama, 256-539-7337. She handles child support, divorce claims, any type of things dealing with family law. SharonFamilyLaw.com.
Thank you, sir. We got in a text question. Person went out for drinks with a friend, went to sleep in their car, thinking that's the safe thing to do and not drive, but the police arrested them in the car for DUI.
All right.
Can you get a DUI for being in the car asleep?
If your keys are in the car, and if you have control over your keys and you're in your car, you can be arrested for DUI. That's kind of the legal standard that we look at in that situation. So what they told me in law school is that if you are going to sleep in your car when you've had too much to drink, take your keys and throw them as far away from the car as possible so that you can't find them and the police can't find them, and then they cannot arrest you for DUI because you're not in control of the vehicle. Now, you can be arrested for public intoxication if you are still intoxicated in a public lot. But basically, the trick is, look, if you're going to be, if you think that's the safest thing you can do, you can't Uber, you can't dial a friend, you don't have anybody to come get you, the best thing to do, put your keys somewhere in your vehicle or they're not accessible to you. In the trunk somewhere, hide them so you can't be found.
Thanks for all your calls and questions, and we'll see you next week. Good night.